Hi guys, this is our last podcast for this unit of work. If I can get this thing to go full screen, it'd be nice. There we go. So this is on our brain. So we've been talking about nerves and hormones and how we sense and respond. And of course, we actually keep memories of successful responses and not so successful responses. And this is called learning. Hopefully you've been learning your cards for your mind palace test and also your juggling for your juggling test. Both things designed to help improve the way we remember uh, experiences. So the brain's really quite a sophisticated object. We're going to cut some up at some point, and they're going to look really quite disappointing when you cut them. Unfortunately, we haven't got the ability to fix them as well as we'd like, but they are just a great pile of goo in many respects. Lots of water, lots of blood vessels, lots of nerves, lots of glial, and it all looks a bit much the same. But of course, there are really important parts to it, especially in something as highly evolved as ourselves. And right in the core here, we've got the thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary, and the pineal gland, which are parts of the endocrine system embedded deeply at top of the brain stem, top of the notochord, right inside our brain. So they're critically important connections between brain, nerves and endocrine, right here at the hub of what all goes on. So the brain regulates all our body functions, responsible for our actions, movements, thoughts, and feelings. The more complex the brain, as in our own case, the more developed it is, and the more complex it is, and the more cells involved. Our brain, 2 k's in 2 kilograms in size, accounts for about 7% of our energy every day. We use our brains a lot. Well, I hope we do. So there's some interesting parts of the brain that we need to sort of pull apart. So the hindbrain is sort of here-ish. It's the extension of the spinal cord. Huge network of neurons, and essentially it controls the vital functions. Things like breathing, blood pressure, the blood beating, the stuff that just happens by itself, those autonomic things that if they weren't happening, we'd be really unwell. Then in the cerebellum, there's my cerebellum right here behind the hindbrain. This is an area where we control our coordination, the timing of our movements, the ability to catch a ball because we can actually see where it is in space in 3 dimensions and grab it. The ability to stay upright rather than fall over all the time. So another critical important part. The midbrain, which is just in here, it's an orange spot, I think on there we are, just in there. Another group of neurons, all neurons of course, but they connect into the hypothalamus and pituitary, and so there's some particular chemical messengers here that modulate things like sleep, reward centers for pleasure, so also dopamine involved. Then there's this wonderful thing called the Dinin Cephalon, and it divides the 2 very important areas of the thalamus and the hypothalamus. So the thalamus relays impulses from all sensory systems to the cerebral cortex, which in turn sends messages back to the thalamus. This back and forth aspect of connectivity in the brain is intriguing. Information travels in multiple directions, which causes all these neural pathways we create. And the hypothalamus controls functions that are really critical: eating, drinking, release of all our hormones involved in our sexual functions, release of hormones involved in maintaining glucose. Really critical thing in the hypothalamus. And that's in this area called the dicephalon. The cerebral hemisphere, which is basically the big blob of the brain, consists of a core, basal ganglia, and extensive but thin surrounding sheet of neurons making up the grey matter of the cerebral cortex. And in here we have initiation of all sorts of interesting things, and a lot of these messages go deep, and the deeper the connections and the more connections from left to right, the stronger the memories are, the stronger the ability to react, and that's why you've been juggling. The cerebral cortex required for all the voluntary things. This is where we store stuff we learn, like language, the ability to speak, and we saw that, have we seen it yet? No, you haven't seen it yet. Interesting little thing from Mr. Anderson and Bozeman, how the left and right interact, and often if you see something in your right eye and you have a condition that doesn't connect your left and right correctly, then you can see it, but you can't say it because the speaking's on the left. Really interesting the way these things all wind together. This is also the most highly developed area because it's where all our thinking takes place, it's all our remembering. And we're not just remembering, but we're remembering all that information, all those things that have happened, and we're making connections between them. We're thinking. We connect memories and tell more complex stories by doing that. So really important part of the brain. And then the corpus callosum is a section which sort of connects left and right. Interestingly enough, in people with schizophrenia, one of the treatments has been to actually slice the corpus callosum in half to disconnect the left and the right. It's pretty radical surgery, and it's obviously only used in really, really bad cases. But it does cause, save people with the problem a lot of heartache, which is a really good outcome. So we're going to do a little bit of activity of the brain. We'll have a look at Mr. Anderson's little podcast. We're going to do some memory tasks. We're going to cut up some brains and talk about what this idea of intelligence is. I mean, that'll be fun in a couple of weeks' time. And